Well, good morning or afternoon or whenever you decide to start viewing this, like I always say. Um, by now it should be clear about a few different details about myself. One, yes, my name is Matthew Jensen. I live in Boise, Idaho. I'm a big, huge Boise State fan. Been so all my life. The son of two Boise State graduates with 3 degrees between them. I've mentioned that all before. Uh, I want to talk about something and then show you guys something later, and that'll all become clear here in a little bit. My brother and myself recently took a trip to an away game against BYU, our football team at Boise State. Um, had an away game coming up against Brigham Young University out, down there in Provo. And we had actually made the trip before, and even though we lost that time, we still had a lot of fun, with it and whatnot. And even planning the trip was fun, and even with the one that happened this year in 2015, that one was also, planning that, at least with the last minute stuff, was actually pretty fun. Anyway, I'm digressing. So we left at about 3:30 a.m. I think it was. In the morning, the day of the game. I don't know if that's actually relevant to my story, but either way, we started down the road, towards Utah, and everything was going more or less okay. We were actually making fairly good time. We made it to the Utah-Idaho border about, maybe a half hour after sunrise. It was still pretty early by that time. And we were slowly making our way down to Provo, seeing some sights that we wanted to see this time. And I wanted to say I wanted to see a lot of different things, such as the This Is the Place monument out east of Salt Lake City there. And I finally got to do that this time. I'd made the trip many times before. I'd never actually got to see that before, so had a few good memories there. Getting there and then beyond that, though, that is where some of our difficulty began, because of the thing that I've always said before, where you and my brother, who was actually driving for this whole thing, he wholeheartedly agrees with me, where you have to have a marked and depraved indifference towards human life if you actually want to have a valid driver's license in the state of Utah. I still stand by my words. In fact, I stand by them even more now, but that's kind of not part of why I'm making this, or at least saying stuff before whatever. So, anyway, for some reason, driving and getting to Provo was more difficult this time around. We couldn't really put our fingers on it, other than the lack of sufficient signage for the different roadways, going all the way down through Utah. And, it's something that, we had encountered before, but still, it was getting, a lot of the drivers were, we nearly got hit about upwards of 10 times. We were just following all traffic laws and whatnot. My brother, Tom, is a very good driver, actually. He's a bit hot-headed, but he was actually very much trying to stay calm that time. If you know him like I do, you know. So, we finally arrived in Provo, and ironically enough, it was, came in pretty much the same way that we did before. We took university all the way through Orem, right down into Provo. Landed us very much near BYU campus, and we did what we did before, where we toured the BYU campus, a little bit. We a lot of the stuff we'd seen before, but, you know, we just wanted to walk around. He especially wanted to see a few of the things passively mentioned in the Tennis Shoes Among the Nephites books. You know, if you're LDS, you get that one. Leading up to the game, though, you know, after we'd walked around and whatnot, there were a lot of minor differences between what security personnel told us and what actually went down and happened. These are just minor, so, you know, we were just trying to brush it off, and we were there to see a good football game against a competent rival and whatnot. You know, I hate using that word rival against BYU, though. It implies certain things that are not going on, but whatever. Anyway, so, you know, we got in with our tickets and whatnot, and some immediate unsettling things started to happen. You know, we arrived in our section, you know, in our seats, you know, section 129 in that upper corner. I think it was the northeast corner of Lavelle Edwards Stadium. I think it was. I think that's what it was. You know, my memory is, you know, whatever. Almost immediately when we were seated, though, a rather large-ish woman in probably her late 60s, maybe older, started to accost us about our flat white signs that we had got through security with no problem. We actually asked about this because, you know, different stadiums have different policies about this kind of thing, but the security on the way in told us, and, you know, told us everything was fine. They let us through, let us get all the way to our seats without any problems, but there was this woman trying to make trouble for us, you know, immediately right off the bat. So we told her, hey, we're not looking for any trouble here. We were just cleared by security. We just sat down. There shouldn't be a problem here. She huffed a bit more, but more or less left us alone. But yeah, more stuff happened. Believe me, more stuff happened. She huffed and puffed, whatever. So we noticed that the Boise State Marching Band, you know, the Keith Stein Blue Thunder Marching Band had come, which was nice. We weren't actually expecting them to be there, since it's not all that common, at least in our experience, that they actually come to away games. They only come away to, like, the big ones, and they didn't the last time. You know, we also went in 2013, you know, I said we'd made the trip before. That was one of those trips, and so we thought that was nice. What wasn't nice, however, is apparently whoever was controlling the music and audio at Lavelle Edwards Stadium there, they weren't nice to the marching band or to the Boise State fans. What started happening immediately when Blue Thunder would start playing, they would turn up the music, and whenever they believed that the music was over, you know, well, that Blue Thunder was over playing for a little bit, they would turn the music back down to the level that it was at. And this happened about 3 or 4 times before the game and continued on into the game. And it wasn't my imagination either. Other people also noticed this. So the stadium started filling in. Okay, you know, we weren't going to leave over that, you know. Fans, mostly BYU fans, but there were a lot of Boise State fans that had actually made the trip and actually come, which was pretty nice. The game started, and the atmosphere started to really degrade because a lot of jeers and whatnot that BYU fans were making, a lot of comments that were you would expect out of, like, the worst of fan bases, like, say, University of Idaho is an example where they're known worldwide, almost, definitely nationwide, you know, of their nasty inebriated stuff. You know, they tried to make a big huff about somebody saying the truth about that some years ago, and now it turns out, yes, they were, in fact, the whole fan base, you know, very much like that. Either way, that digressing, I'm getting off the point here. So, the first minor injuries in the game started to happen, and that's when we noticed something was missing from the normal BYU traditions that we know that they have, you know, because I've seen BYU games myself a few times. There, you know, the times that they faced Boise State once before at Lavelle Edwards Stadium, and you know, other times at Boise State. You know, in Boise, you know, at Bronco Stadium. I call it Bronco Stadium. I don't call it by its bot name. Beside the point. Anyway, so when before we noticed this, and this was a very documented BYU tradition where the players themselves would actually kneel on the field and keep that posture until the injured player, no matter who it was, whether it was one of their own or one of their opponents, was off the field, either walked or carted off or whatever. They didn't do that at this game. And not only that, in games since where I've watched on TV, BYU definitely was not doing this. Now, this wouldn't really mean much if they hadn't been doing that tradition to begin with, but we noticed this because it's a very clear lack of respect where they had certain respect before, which means their own behavior by default was degrading. You know, that is something that we noticed, where they no longer respected their opponent enough to be doing that anymore. So, there was that. You know, we were just still watching the game. Whatever. You know, so, you know, we kept watching. You know, we'd come a long way where we weren't just about to leave or anything like that. So, you know, as the game went on, BYU fans were actually cheering that BSU players were getting injured. Now, this may not have been reflected on the TV as much, but if you were there at Lavelle Edwards Stadium and you were listening, you definitely knew that that was happening. Now, that is only the kind of activity that the lowest of the low do. I don't think that even... I don't think that... here's this example again. I don't think even vandals do that. I mean, that's how low that kind of behavior is. Now, but, you know, we kept watching, so, you know, this wasn't going to deter us from enjoying a game. So, they even booed when they were suggesting that, when people were suggesting that Chancellor James got punched in the nuts. Now, this very clearly did happen. Everybody who was watching on TV saw it. A lot of people who were there at the game saw it. And this was pretty clear that this happened, but people were still getting grief for saying this. Not because it was untrue. They knew it was true, but kept on harassing people over this. Now, in fact, even later, after the game, you know, on the way home, and when I got home later, on Twitter and social media and whatnot, BYU fans were actually suggesting that it wasn't a punch in the nuts at all. In fact, it was a dead ball or something. You know, dead ball is for those of you that don't follow football, it's a football term. Anyway, not a reference to his testes. Anyway, so they were actually, it was a thigh tap or a thigh punch. In fact, I just had an exchange on Twitter with a guy, which, I was sharing the Twitter, the tweet several months later now, just to, as a part of a reminder, hey, BYU fans actually were trying to pass this off as some sort of legitimate action. When it was very clear that they themselves knew that it wasn't. The punching player was Lapu Wapu or something. I never get those kinds of names right, so it's not like I'm trying to get it wrong or anything like that. Anyway, somewhere around this time, I'm losing track of exactly the time of events in the game, you know. Either way, somewhere around this time, my brother and I flipped a coin because, you know, neither of us actually wanted to leave our seats. It was actually quite an arduous journey in and of itself without any hindrance, which, you know, I'll get to that later. To go down the steps, find the concession, well, not find, but you get to the concessions area and then come back. We had not really drank any water or any kind of fluids or had anything since about an hour before we got to the game, which at that point was actually pretty long freaking time. So my brother lost the coin toss, so he went down and came back. And came back with two refillable cups that had the BYU logo and Go Cougars on the side of it. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning these cups specifically will become clear later. Remember them. And I also remember these cups being somewhat of an exorbitant price, like a program that touts itself as an LDS missionary tool really should rethinking that area of it. Well, they should be rethinking a lot of it. Now, if I haven't really mentioned this before either in this video, because, you know, I'm not really going off the script. You know, I'm an LDS man, you know, and a lot, and even before this whole trip and whatnot, I've said that there's some things that BYU sports do that are actually very, very offensive to people that are practicing LDS members. Either way, I'm getting off track again. So, either way, we got the cups. We were okay for a while. You know, at least until after the game, at least. So, now, I am known, along with many others, as the kind of Boise State fan that does not leave a game early, home or away, win or losing. We find it offensive. Now, there's been a few different names for this kind of thing. The name that I use for this, at least for Boise State fans, they're success and honor people. It's a direct reference towards the fight song, you know, success and honor make her great. You know, that's what at least I call this group of people that do not leave early. So that's actually not important, but either way, so despite all of this, even how the last few minutes of the game went, you know, considering all of this BYU fan behavior just degenerating even more and more and more as the minutes went on, during the final minutes of the game, you know, things naturally got worse for Boise State. Go back and look at that game if you want. Go back to the last few minutes of the football game. You know, there's something like 3 or 4 minutes left on the game clock. Just go to that point in the game and start watching from there. You'll know what I'm talking about when things get worse. Okay, you know, at least on the field. You know, speaking of, you will know what I mean. So anyway, the game finally got over. And if you haven't figured it out by now, Boise State lost that game also. Now, I was born in the middle of what some people refer to as the Vandal streak. So, yes, it hurts me very deeply that Boise State loses the game. But, you know, that's the kind of thing that I get over, you know. There was a time when I was actually used to my team, my heritage, losing, you know. Either way. But when we got up to leave, this is where immediately the challenges got worse. You know, I wrote it down here as when the challenges began. No, this is just when the challenges got worse. A lot worse, though. When we got up to leave, almost immediately, one of our signs was ripped right out of my hands and held up in an unclassy and mocking way by a short-ish woman, a BYU fan. It was held up in a unclassy, rather mocking way, deciding it wasn't really worth it. I mean, I paid what, maybe $1 for that, you know, total for all that stuff. I just kept going. You know, despite their bad behavior, I just kept going. You know, some words were likely exchanged. You know, especially my brother. He, with all, you know, I love him very deeply, and even with all of his faults, and one of those faults was definitely running his mouth some, at least at that point. But either way, so I love my brother very much. you know, don't take any of that as anyway. We started walking down the steps because we were actually kind of close to the stairs. So 3 different BYU fans tried to trip us on the way down. Now, this is, again, using this example, this is only a behavior I've ever seen from 2 different opposing fans, you know, opposing teams, you know, fans before. I've seen it from University of Nevada, Reno people, you know, the Wolfpack, and I've seen this from the University of Idaho Vandals, you know. I've really only seen that from that 2. They're considered by me to be the lowest of the low in college football fandom. And BYU, in those moments, added themselves to that list. You're actually trying to trip and injure somebody, because it's actually kind of a steep incline in a stadium like that. If you look at Lavelle Edwards Stadium, especially those corners that, you know, a lot of us were in, yeah, you could see how that's actually an intent to injure somebody. Either way, we didn't get tripped because we're actually looking out. Now, one of the last people who tried to do this, however, was wearing both a CTR ring and a hat and a ring with an old BYU logo on it. And he looked to be about 40. You know. Either way. So he sarcastically apologized for beating Boise State. Now, it's possible he was a football player back in the day. He very much plumped up since then, but either way. But he definitely wasn't one of the players on the field, so I don't know what that beating Boise State comment was really about. In a moment of anger, I did tell him to choke on his Rammy-umptum. Now, if you're LDS, you get why the reference to Alma 31 should be so damning to the person I was saying it to. Now, if you're not LDS, I'll tell you 2 things. 1, it's not a phallic joke, and 2, look it up. Rammy-umptum. R-A-M-E-U-M-T-O-M. Either way. We struggled and finally got to the bottom of the steps. Now, this is definitely, you know, there's still a lot of ways to go. It's just internally in the stadium. This is where things got even more maddening and disheartening, you know, as we're winding down our way down to the exits, you know, and trying to get out of there. Because, you know, by this point, we're all pretty cheesed off, and we're looking to get out of Provo and out of the whole area and out of Utah altogether at that point. You know, and this is actually pretty late by that time. You know, if you look at when that game started and how long it took and how, you know, what the time it had to have been by that time, you know, it's pretty late. We're just trying to get out of there. This is where we encountered a man who was roughly, well, I'd say a little bit over 6 feet. Now, I'm about 5'9", so, you know, I'm a little bit shorter than him. He looks, you know, he was a white adult male, a little over 6 foot, blonde hair, blue eyes. Looks like he had been athletic in a former life, but at that point was focusing on other things probably. Either way, he started antagonizing my brother. We were trying to very much ignore this person because at this point engaging with anybody was definitely not a priority, you know. We're trying to get out of them, but this dude insisted on, well, he persisted with us to the point of threatening assault on my brother. Now, if you know me, I do not casually say this kind of thing. You know, even if somebody was threatening assault on somebody, I usually do not mention it unless it's actually pretty pivotal of what I'm trying to communicate. I do not say that kind of thing lightly. But it took me getting in between my brother and this person and looking him straight in the eyes and telling him to back up to prevent him from being assaulted, because I'm pretty sure that if I had not intervened, if I myself wasn't there along with my brother, I'm pretty sure my brother would have gotten assaulted. I told the dude to back up, and he still kept on blah 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 after that, but whatever. We reached the bottom of the winding thing, and we're still struggled a lot to get to the exit, which was the same entrance that we got in, same gate. We finally reached there. Now, we still had the entire back of, the entire east side of Lavelle Edwards Stadium to get to, I think the road was University, and from there, to our bus. Either way, so along that whole back edge, there's still a lot of people out there, naturally. That part I don't necessarily have a problem with. There's going to be a lot of people around a football stadium right after the game. However, right at about that point, going from that gate all the way along the back to where we were going, there were scores of BYU fans horrifically mocking us with all kinds of bad language that that LDS people should not be using, but they definitely were. It's not like I'm starting to hear things. I'm only 30. Either way. Not only this, but more than once we heard individuals praying out loud in thanks that the Cougars, the Lord's team, had beat the Broncos. Now, if you were a practicing LDS person, this may not matter to a whole lot of other people, but if you were a practicing LDS person, you already know a few different reasons why that's extremely offensive, that was happening. So, that had also happened too. And we reached the road, and I think it was University, the southern part, the southern edge of Lavelle Edwards Stadium, where security personnel were only impeding Boise State fans who were crossing that road, outside of the sidewalk. They were letting BYU people go across just fine. Now we saw, both ourselves and other Boise State fans were being impeded, but they were looking straight at BYU people. Just go across that road unhindered. Now, don't know why they would act that way, unless it was to further punish people for having the audacity to actually attend that game. But whatever. We finally reached our bus, made it back to our car, and left Provo for good, and promising that we would never return to that awful place. And I'm here to swear right now in front of the world. This is not the point of the video, but I'm swearing right now that I am never, ever, ever going back to that place. I'm not going back to Provo, ever. So, you remember those cups that I told you about partway through, that we flipped a coin and got? One of those turned up in my brother's car recently, and apparently we didn't throw it away on our way out of there. We were just trying to get out of the stadium, out of Provo, and back home at that point. So, we're trying to get out of that bad place. So, I decided to do a video on that cup. When not necessarily about the cup itself, but rather the kind of trip and experiences that it represented, and about burning it. So, here you go. Here you all go. Here is a video of a burning cup from one of the dirtiest teams and fan bases in college football. Enjoy. Oops. Yeah, I'm gonna want to let that burn out. This is gonna take a while to import on the computer. Oh, 20 minutes. Wow. Oh, 26 minutes.